welcome to Unabashedly Resolute. I am your host, Wes Mullins.
I didn't come looking for trouble.
No, I didn't.
And I don't want to fight needlessly.
No, I don't.
But I'm not gonna hide in a bubble if trouble comes for me.
Absolutely will not.
I can feel my heart beating faster. I can tell something's coming down.
Here it comes.
But if it's gonna make me go stronger, then bring it on. Let the lightning flash, let the thunder.
Hey guys, I thought that would be kind of a cool intro to go to. Bring It On by Mr. SCC, Stephen Curtis Chapman. Hello guys, it's been a long time. It's been about 3 months since my last podcast. It's been crazy 3 months. I had to take some time off to do some work. We traveled abroad, the wife and I and the kids. We went to Norway for 6 weeks. Before then, I had to travel to tax land, and good Lord, my taxes were a mess. It took a couple months to figure all that out, and so we are back now. So much has happened in the last 3 months. Each and every day, it looks more and more like the inmates are running the asylum, and so we're here. I was listening to Glenn Beck, and those of you who don't listen to him, and you remember him from Fox News, remember him from last 10 years, I encourage you to check him out again. Just give him a listen. I'm not saying everything he says is fantastic, but there's a humility and there's something there. I'll just put it that way. There's something there. Anyway, listening to Mr. Beck talk about. Oh, actually, a person called in. A person called in to the Glenn Beck show and said, Glenn, if I hear both sides, I listen to both sides of the story, I still don't know what's true. I don't know if they're being true or if they're not being true. So even if I listen to both sides of the issue, I still don't know what the right answer is. If I listen to none of the answers, then I feel like I'm ignorant. But if I listen to all the answers, then I feel like I'm confused. And so how do we find the truth in the matter? And so that's what Glenn was talking about. How do you find truth? How do you find truth? And before we go there, just to let you guys know, I am at Jay's Place down in downtown Nicholasville. It's a place I like to come to. We've got a really cool atmosphere here. And I may start doing some of my podcasts from Jay's Place, just sitting here in the window looking out. So if you hear noise in the background, that's what it is. But Jay's Place is a really cool place to get a good mocha. I'm just drinking this fantastic London fog tea drink that is just amazing. And they have good food too. So come on down to Jay's Place. No, there's my plug for them, but just letting you know where I am and what the reason for the noise in the background. So, what is truth? Can it be known? There are lots of people who say there are no absolute truths. Truth doesn't exist. And it's really hard to believe those people when they say that, for the simple reason of, when someone says there are no absolute truths, you simply reply, is that true? Those of you that listen to the show, I've gone through the whole conversation there, but it's impossible for the statement, there are no absolute truths, to be true, because it disproves itself, or we call that, it refutes itself. It's a self-referential incoherency in philosophical terms. And so, what is truth and can we find it? Talking to a friend a few days ago, like I haven't done my due diligence. I have to read about all the candidates for president. I have to read. I'm making a conscious vote. It's my vote. It's my voice. I get one chance to make my voice known. And I have to do all the research, and I haven't done it yet. It's so overwhelming. And I said, I want to give you a little insight and a little tip so you don't have to read everything, because reading everything is exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. We don't have to, it's just like for an apologetics. We don't have to refute every argument. We just have to rebut arguments, just push back. And so you don't have to do all this work. I told her, I was like, go to a website and pull up logical fallacies, the top 10 logical fallacies. Just pull that up. Study those. Look at those. And then begin your due diligence. When you come to an article that is full of logical fallacies, you push it aside and say, that's one vote against the candidate. Because the candidate is saying things that are false. So we know, one, that they're not saying things that are true. It means that they are lacking something in character. And just continue down that path. That way, you don't have to be partial, or you don't have to be polarized in it's us versus them, it's us versus them. It's not us versus them. It's the Constitution, it's truth against lies. It's not people against people, it's truth against lies. And people who present lies as truth are not to be trusted. They have no principles. And that's pretty much it. So when your candidate produces statements that are fallacious, and they do it habitually, they're not to be trusted. Because if they can't be trusted to speak the truth, how can they be trusted to act within the bounds of truth as their behavior and as their platform and as their policies? They can't. So, what do we do? I mean, that is the question. How do we find truth? You know, for the last half century, the Western culture has tried so hard they've tried so hard to separate themselves from truth and from reality, because truth is offensive. It could be any truth. It could be the truth that I'm not good enough for a certain thing. That truth hurt. It makes me uncomfortable. Who are you to say that I'm not good enough? The parameters of whatever objective thing says that you're not good enough for this thing. You're not good enough to be a doctor. Why? Well, because you can't remember medical procedures. You're not good enough. That's an objective reality. There's the objective standards. You don't match up the objective standards. Therefore, you cannot be a doctor. These are the parameters for that. So, they have tried so hard to break away from this objective reality and go to a subjective reality. And my generation, we were so upset with our parents. We were so upset with our grandparents who said, doing what is right is more important than being happy. And we watched our grandparents and our parents be miserable on principle. And we said, screw that. I want to be happy. Life is too short to stand on principles. We need to stand on happiness. So we, in society, took this magnificent pantheon pillar of principles, and we said this is no longer important. What is important is being happy, because life is too short. So I want to be happy, and in being happy, we will make our home there. So we chose emotional truth as opposed to an objective truth. What's the one problem you see with that? The one problem that you see with that is our emotions are not consistent. Our emotions are not stable. Sleep, food, relationships, environment, pollution, all this stuff affects our moods, hormones, all of it affects our moods, and our truths then become slippery. Our principle becomes slippery because it's based on happiness. So a happiness now may cause me pain later, but my happiness truth, my truthometer is happiness now, which becomes, what do we call that? We call that instant gratification. Instead of delayed gratification, we become a generation of instant gratification. I want my happiness and I want it now. I don't want to wait on principle for happiness 60 years from now when I've lived a miserable life, but I stood on principle and I had happiness in the end. You know, C.S. Lewis says if you search for truth, you may indeed find both truth and comfort, but if you alone search for comfort, you will find neither. And so, in the search for truth, we have to stand on principle. So we have to go back to detaching our emotions from truth and saying, well, it's emotionally true. It's emotionally true. You know, in relationships, when somebody says, well, I'm just telling you how I feel, this is how I feel and my feelings have validity. You're right, your feelings have validity, but sometimes you feel things and it's true that you felt that. But what is not truth is the fact that you should have felt a certain way or this way or that way. If someone says something to you that hurts your feelings and they didn't say it to you in a way to provoke that feeling, then the fact that you feel that way is true. But it wasn't a true, it wasn't an honest reaction in the situation. It was a projection reaction from yourself. So there are levels of trueness. And that London fog drink is so good. So in the search for truth, we have many avenues that we have to go through to get there. And truth is objective, and it's something that we discover, something that we uncover, something that we find, because we have to sift through lies to get to it. We have to sift through lies to get to it. But the thing about truth is, it will always remain once all the lies fall apart and everything falls apart. Because a lie, and essentially a lie is nothing. A lie is paper mache. You can put paper mache around a concrete pillar and say, oh, look, this is what I've made. When the rains come, the only thing that's going to be standing is that concrete pillar. So you can hide truth. You can cover it up. You can put it in the song says you can put it under a bushel. But the truth remains that truth will out. It will come out. And guess what? Truth doesn't just mean to come out. It has to come out. And it's because it exists. It's actually the only thing that actually exists. The lie does not exist because it's false. And false things don't actually exist. So what do we do in the search for truth in the political world, in the search for truth in our lives? Those of you that are Christian, there's a mental exercise that we need to do. Paul talks about what sort of things are lovely, what sort of things are honest, what sort of things are just, what sort of things are of a good report, if there be virtue, if there be praise. Think on these things and practice these things. Think on these things. Stop for a minute. Reflect on that. Think on these things. Here's a mental exercise for Christians and non-Christians alike. Take 30 seconds of your day and just try to push all the thoughts out of your head. Yeah, and it's true, in Eastern religion they would call this meditation, trying to clear your mind. Do it. Just take 30 seconds. Push all thoughts out. Every thought that comes into your mind, just push it, push it, push it, push it, push it. For 30 seconds, just try to hold it out. Do that for a week. Week 2, do it for a minute. Week 3, do it for 5 minutes. Week 4, do it for 5 minutes. Week 5, do it for 10 minutes. Keep increasing the time until you can get to a good 20 or 30 minutes that you can think no thoughts. Just push that out of your head and just breathe and just exist in this peaceful realm. And then begin to invite in good thoughts. Begin to think about what sort of things are lovely, what sort of things are just, Whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. And begin to think about those things. For us Christians, when you begin to take that 30-second span, invite Christ into that 30-second span. Invite the Holy Spirit into that 30 seconds of freedom. Say, Holy Spirit, fill us up. Stretch it, fill it up. When you're in there 30 minutes, stretch it and fill it up. Because what prayer is, for those of you that don't understand what prayer is not me constantly talking to God. And in prayer, we say, let's pray. And so automatically you start talking. What? Why is it that we start talking the minute we say, well, let's get into prayer with God? When you and I have a conversation, when you have let's say you have a conversation with someone, not me, but you have a conversation with someone, what's the first thing? You say, hey, let's have a conversation, okay? Do you automatically start talking? Well, one person starts talking. What's the other person do? They listen. Listening is such a huge part of a conversation, and we need to get back to listening. Before we open our mouths to God, take that 30 seconds and try to listen to God. Push all the thoughts out and say, God, I just want to listen to you. I just want to listen to you. Speak, Lord. I just want to listen to you. And what I'm saying is, have that intention. You don't have to say it again because I'm saying, well, don't say anything. Open your mind up to listening, pushing the thoughts out because, God, I'm opening up the space for you. I'm opening the space for truth. Because there's so much noise out there. Because our minds are insatiable and there's so much going on. You know, when you look at Facebook, what is it that keeps people on Facebook for 4 and 5 hours at a time and is wasting our day? What is it that keeps us? What is it that keeps us on the news? What is it that keeps us watching television? What is it that keeps us watching the next binging on TV shows? What is it that keeps us? I hope you're ready for this, because this is the greatest temptation. This is the temptation that Eve fell to, and we fall to it every single day. We fall to it every single day. It's the greatest temptation. It's the temptation of knowledge. And what knowledge am I talking about? To know good from evil? It's the knowledge. You in Facebook, you scroll to the next person's Facebook because there's something else there. It's tantalizing. It's tempting you with the thought of new information, new knowledge. And like an addict, like a fiend, you go to the next one. You go to the next one. And you devour it. You go to the next one and you devour it. You go to the next one and you devour it. And you become insatiable with these with taking in all this knowledge. But is it all beneficial? Is it all knowledge? Is it all understanding? Is it all good? Is it all bad? Do you even know? And the problem is you have all this information, but not all information is knowledge. Knowledge is justified true belief. Knowledge is justified true belief. If it's not justified true belief, it's not knowledge because it's not beneficial. It's just information. It's just raw data. But it's Facebook tempts us with the fact that the next story could be this amazing story that's going to move your heart. The next story could be the story that makes you that corresponds with your beliefs. The next story is going to be something that's going to fill that void. The next story is going to be something that's going to help you. The next story is going to be this. The next story is going to be that. And that's the temptation. That's what got Eve. That's how the serpent got Eve. He said, you'll be like gods. You'll know good and evil. It's a tree of knowledge. You'll have good and evil, and this knowledge will be yours, and you'll be able to make decisions. You'll be like God. And Eve looked at the tree, and she said, ooh, it's desirable. The tree is desirable to eat. It's desirable. So what do? We also have the same thing in our thoughts. Our next thought's going to be amazing. Our next thought's going to be great. Our next thought's going to be this. This is how lust comes from a thought, and then we let it morph into something else, and we get lost in that thought and that thought process, and we want that thought process to come, and it's the promise of fulfillment. The next thought is going to fulfill me. The next post is going to fulfill me. The next The next post is going to bring me closer to truth. And it never does. No, I don't say it never does. But a lot of times we just spin our wheels. We just spin our wheels. So, when we're searching for this truth, we need to be disciplined in our minds. The Bible says, take every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. What does that mean, every thought to captivity? What was the obedience of Christ? The obedience of Christ was, Father, let this pass from me. Let this cup pass from me. Let this cup pass from me. Jesus grew afraid and said, let this cup pass from me. But not my will, but thine be done. What? Why? Why was that important? Because, think about His will being done. What is the obedience of Christ? The obedience of Christ is doing the will of the Father. It's going to your death. It's sacrificing yourself. That's the mind of Christ. To be willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good, which is what? It's principles. It's standing on principles. It's standing on character and nature, which is exactly what we've given up in the last half century, is standing on our principles because we've decided to go for happiness. We've decided to let this cup pass. We don't want suffering, but read the New Testament. Paul says all the time that it's the suffering with Christ that brings us closer to Him. It's the suffering with Christ that's going to help us reign with Him. We become co-heirs with Christ. And the suffering we face now will pale in comparison to the glory that we will receive. But we're going to have to suffer with Him. Those who suffer with Him will reign with Him. But we're like, no, we don't want suffering. Suffering is bad. That's a humanistic... for those Christians who think suffering is bad, that is a humanistic platitude and worldview. That's humanistic. Human flourishing is good. Anything that impedes human flourishing is evil. That's atheism. You actually have incorporated an atheistic dogma into your Christian dogma. And you're a little confused. Jesus says, the Bible says, God says, I chastise the ones I love. Trees grow bigger and stronger in dry seasons. Their roots go deeper, and the tree becomes stronger, more rooted in the ground in the dry seasons. If you have lots of rain and lots of water, your roots are shallow. Strong wind comes and you fall over the edge pretty easily with the strong wind. But if you have a couple seasons of arid and dryness, your roots have to go deep, and the tree grows these roots, and it goes until it finds that moisture and finds that water. And the farmer comes out and he begins to prune that tree and get rid of the water suckers on the bottom, and the branches get bigger and larger, and he prunes the tree. And it's amazing because in the pruning of the tree, he actually increases the size of the tree and the beauty of the tree and the more fruit that the tree produces by the pruning. But we don't want the pruning. Why? Because it hurts. It's not instant gratification, it's delayed gratification. Why? Because it's built on a principle. It's built on a principle. Suffering at some point will bring goodness at another point. But we don't want that. Truth involves suffering. Truth involves wrestling it out. That's what the Unabashedly Resolute podcast is about. It's about wrestling out our salvation. Seek out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Wrestle it out. Jacob wrestled with the angel. I will not let you go. He wrestled with it. We have to be willing to wrestle with this. We have to be willing to wrestle in agony. Jesus prayed in the garden. The sweat came like drops of blood. He wrestled with this. We have to be able to wrestle. We have to be willing to wrestle for truth, because truth is a process. Because we have to weed out all of our all of our human condition. We have to begin to weed out our human nature. That's what stands in the way. It's not the fact that truth changes. It's changing our nature. It's changing our character. It's reshaping us. That's why you can take someone who has been a hardcore atheist for most of their life, or a drug addict, or they've been in this weird place with they have this Buddhist, and then when he meets Jesus Christ, he's instantly changed, and suddenly he has a new way of talking, a new way of acting, a new way of behaving. Why? Because suddenly his human nature has been conquered, at least for a little bit. Now, if he begins to indulge that human nature as it begins to slowly speak up, like Voldemort coming back from in the Harry Potter stories from the very beginning, where he's this little tiny thing on the back of a guy's head until he goes into be full-blown Voldemort. That's what it's like. It's been destroyed, but suddenly now he's coming back. So if you allow your human nature, or we call it in Christianity, your flesh, to come back, that will impede truth. We're trying to allow ourselves to be pruned, allow ourselves to be smooth stones so we can understand truth. What gets in the way of truth, concrete, absolute truth, objective truth, what gets in the way of that is us. The truth never changes. It's our perceptions that have to be smoothed down and our rough edges smoothed out by time and by suffering in order for us to come to the conclusions of truth and agree with them. The truth never changes. It's only us that changes to accept truth. That's a very, very hard concept. But in our pursuit for truth, we need to have compassion for those who yet haven't attained certain truths that we have come to, because it took us a while to also come to that truth as well. Correct? So as we begin to search for truth. So you know what's interesting, and my mind just skipped a beat there. What's interesting is when everybody who was all about postmodernism and about these feelings and these emotions, and I want emotional truth over this, what they're finding out is when you have no principled truth to speak of, and everybody's truth is their own truth, and everybody's truth is whatever they want to make it, how can you condemn someone else? How can you reproach someone? How can you go to a Hillary Clinton and say, well, you lied about this, you're not worthy to be our president, or Donald Trump, you're an idiot, you lie all the time, you manipulate and you bully, you don't deserve to be our president. How can you do that, considering they're just acting on their own truths? Who are you to say that they're wrong or they're not principled? Because you have taken truth and made it. You're taking lying and made lying the new standard, because you said, well, truth doesn't matter. It's only my truth. Then Donald Trump's truth is the only thing that's true for him. You can't combat him and say, well, it's untrue. And because the question becomes, says who? But this can only last for so long. Postmodernism will fail. Anything that has been built on postmodernism, anything that has been built on this notion that we need to be subjective in our truth is subjective in our understanding, and morality is subjective and all this, anything built on these foundations will absolutely fail. They have to, because they're not built on anything honest or true. And it's because it's also self-refuting. Postmodernism is self-refuting, so anything built on that will absolutely fall apart, and it will fail, and it will crumble to the ground. And you start hearing people who are my age now, who have lived a life of championing postmodernism, they're now sitting back and saying, but what about truth? And they're seeing politicians going, truth? It's perspective. I give the truth scope. Truth's what I want it to be. Truth's what I want to tell you. And suddenly you have no principles, and then the laws don't matter, because someone could say, well, what do you mean? Define the word is. I did not have sexual relationship with that woman. Oh, you know what? I did. But it's not perjury because I was honest because I believed it when I told you. And so suddenly the laws don't matter because you have no principle to stand on. You have no history to stand on. You have no objective truth to stand on. So this is going to take us as Christians and us as Americans to take the next 50 years to begin to build and instill in our children principles, and principles with purpose. Because I've seen countries that become moral. I think Norway's a good country where they have laws and the people are moral. But as a culture, drinking is up huge there. Lots of people drink. One, it's a very expensive place to live, but people still drink a lot. There's a lot of divorce. I mean, a lot more than in the States in divorce. And Christianity is pretty much non-existent there. It's just non-existent. I mean, there are Christians, but it's a historical, anthropological find there. It's something that happened in the past. They're post-Christian. But what they're finding is they're finding out that here's what will happen. If you're good, if you're moral, but you don't have a purpose for being moral other than the law, you're actually being good for no reason. And if you're good for no reason, at some point you're going to be tired of being good for no reason, and you're going to be good for nothing. And if you're good for nothing, then you're just going to turn to being bad. And when that happens, there's going to be nothing to stop the onslaught of immorality, impropriety, and then lawlessness. That's what happens. I mean, usually lethargy will lead to anarchy, and that's what happened in America. We've allowed this lethargy to lead to apathy, and then that leads to anarchy. But we've taken the great things that the generations before us fought for in principled ways and set up, and we've taken them and said, thank you, I'll take this and I'll make it better. And we scoffed at them and mocked them and had such disdain. You know, it's interesting, there's the quote that when I was 18, my dad knew nothing. When I turned 21, I was amazed at how much he learned in so few short years. In saying that, we scoff at people, generations before us, and say, you guys are a bunch of idiots. Let me show you how to do it. And then we start trying to do it ourselves, and we realize, oh, they actually weren't stupid. They actually are pretty smart. They did this. If you go back and you read the Founding Fathers documents, if you go back and read the Federalist Papers, if you go back and read George Washington stuff, guys were brilliant. Brilliant. We have done nothing in the last 100 years but make a mockery of all their brilliance. And we've scoffed at them and said, you bunch of idiots. I mean, think about this. Think about the prevailing notion now that anything that's not 21st century is passé and it's irrelevant. That's the feelings you get in public schools. Some public schools now don't teach any books from the 20th century because they're full of white privilege and racism and anything before the 21st century has all these glowing errors, and we've evolved way past that. So what happens? Well, we begin to repeat those exact same problems because human nature rises up again. And with we take the capital that was gained by principled people and we squander it. Trying to recreate worldviews that have failed miserably for centuries. These worldviews have failed, and they've failed every time, and they've always ended in destruction. And we think, no, we're gonna do it this time. We have figured out we're gonna do it this time. And by rewriting history and by ignoring certain writers and things, we're creating this environment wherein we will ultimately repeat everything again. We will fail. And so those of us that can see this, the visionaries, we have to begin to instill in our children, you're going to be the ones who are going to have to pull us out of this. We're not leaving you with anything good. We're going to leave you with a very messed up world. We tried to make it better. We thought we were so much smarter than our parents and their grandparents. We thought we were so much smarter than the great generation, the greatest generation ever, World War II. They did all these horrible things. We would never do these horrible things. And come to find out, human nature will allow you to do those horrible things. Absolutely allow you to do those. So as we search for truth, what we have to discover is who we are. And in discovering truth, you're going to find out who you are. That's why most people never, when they say, oh, I'm a seeker of truth, they're perpetually a seeker of truth because they don't ever want to find truth, because when they find truth, truth is a glaring mirror in your face to show you all of your imperfections. And when that happens, you will not like what you see, because all of your imperfections are shown. Every failure you have is shown, and you don't want that, because truth can't lie, because it's truth. Truth can't cover up because it's truth. Truth can't rationalize because it's truth. Truth is just truth. It exists. It is. God is truth. Truth is actually the only thing that exists. Nothing else exists but truth. And so when we look at truth, we see who we really are. And we realize that our human condition is bent to do the thing we don't want to do. Paul says, man, I want to do good, but it's the bad thing that I do. I don't want to do the bad thing, but it's exactly what I do. Who would deliver me from this body of death? So as we begin to meditate and give the space for the Holy Spirit to come in, or to give the space to push back everything and say, truth, come in. For those of you that aren't Christians, that are listening, and you want to say, hey, I like the meditation thing. Push all the thoughts out and just say, truth. I want truth to come in. I want truth to come in. I'm creating a space in my mind for truth. I'm creating a space in my heart for truth. And you're going to be amazed at what happens when you begin to control your mind. You begin to be disciplined in your mind. I don't think it would turn into a yogi, and not Yogi Bear, or Yogi the Bear. It's deja vu all over again. Or it's the ranger. Let's do some picnic baskets. But when you invite truth into your life, for those who are universalists out there and all that, as you begin to invite truth into your life, things are going to happen. We need to find, wrestle, discover, uncover, and become humbled, and to allow truth into our lives, and allow truth to reign and become principled, and set these principles up, and realize that if it doesn't make me happy, if this is true, I need to have this certain behavior because this is true. Above my happiness, I need to go back to principles. And principles will then again help to enforcement of laws, which would have helped the indictment of Hillary Clinton. See how we get there? I have some other things to talk about truth in the next podcast, but for now, I think we're good. I want to thank you guys for stopping by and listening. I know it's been a while. Hopefully that hiatus won't happen again. We do have a workshop in Uganda in March, but hopefully we'll still be able to do a podcast during that time. Anyway, so just really glad to be able to talk to everybody again and get these things off my chest and out there into the world. Thanks for stopping by, guys, and listening. I'm going to send you guys off with some more. Bring it on. This has been Wes Mullins with Unabashedly Resolute. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay resolute.
I didn't come looking for trouble, and I don't wanna fight needlessly. But I'm not gonna hide in a bubble if trouble comes for me. I can feel my heart beating faster. I can tell something's coming down. But if it's gonna make me go stronger,